Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, lONl, and I'll be doing a gameplay commentary over some Call of Duty Black Ops 2. For this particular video, I wanted to talk about the recording capabilities that are upcoming on the next generation of consoles. As you guys are familiar, the PlayStation 4 has confirmed officially that they will have the share and record button available to the consumers on day one. You'll have the ability to upload your video to social media sites and hopefully build a database from that standpoint. But with that in mind, as far as my knowledge serves me correct, I want to say that Xbox One has not officially confirmed this, but at the same expense, I doubt that they are not going to do it. It's a very good thing for marketing, but at the same expense, it's a great advertisement tool. You can't let Sony have that big of a gap between you and the other company, because, well, in most circumstances, that gap is what is a determining factor which people will definitely capitalize on to purchase a product that they feel comfortable with, or that has benefits that are exceptional to them as a consumer. So I imagine Microsoft will jump on the bandwagon. If that's, needless to say the least, they'll do it right off the bat, or if that'll be at a later date, that's to be announced. But of course, guys, we are going to be spending a majority of the time talking about capabilities of the actual product, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, followed by the sheer fact of external devices that you use, such as Elgato, AverMedia, and Hauppauge being the other devices. As I'm sure many of you guys are familiar, the PlayStation 4 is going to have this officially confirmed. So that leaves a big gap for Sony to take the full reins and definitely lead the charge into the recording software. But at the same expense, you as a consumer do not have the maximum benefits that maybe you might think. Of course, not everything is confirmed. I don't plan and act like I have a clue of what they'll do for how they store the information, but I do have a good idea to how they're going to definitely keep control over the consumers to, well, in most cases, benefit this to themselves instead of allowing everybody to have the freedom to do as they so wish. And that's what companies are for. They try to keep the consumers in line so that, one, we don't break their products, but at another circumstance, we don't definitely develop things that were not supposed to be there in the first place. So guys, I'm going to start breaking things down a little bit, give you guys some information, but before we begin with the actual consoles, I want to talk about the external ones as I enlisted before. As many of you guys know, when you buy an external piece of hardware, you have complete control over it. It allows you to adjust frame rate, resolution rates, color correction, pretty much anything that you would like. You have complete control to make the video as you desire. And that's something to take into consideration. That's definitely nice to be able to match your settings and be like, hey, this is what the final product should look like, and there should be no deviation from these settings. And that's why a lot of people use external devices, because they have the capabilities to maximize on what they envision. And if you have a vision, you definitely don't want to stray too far from it, because in most cases that just doesn't exactly follow up to what you thought the final product might be. So the pros and the cons of an external device. The pros being, one, you have complete control over the product. Well, in most cases, that's always a good thing. You want to be able to adjust frame rate, resolution, as I enlisted before, and that allows you to make the video the best it can be. It also usually comes with instructions that are beneficial to you to read, but also capitalize on. They're very reliable products, and you know what you paid for. When you buy a product like that, you know exactly what the product has. You know exactly that they all have similar settings, they just slightly adjust from one another to be a competitive product. Now, the negatives of it. One, it's another piece of hardware. It sits on your desk, your table, the ground, whatever you choose to place it at, and that's how it works out. Also, it is its own individual device, so it's going to have wires that need to be hooked up to a PC in order to work, and in most cases you have to physically press record instead of it magically doing it for you. And finally, it's its own heat generation. It's going to make more heat because it's its own product. It's going to have a power supply in it. It's going to operate the exact same as you would expect. And in most cases, if it plugs into something, even though that might be your PC or the wall, it still has an electronic current, electrical current. It's going to be something that's going to generate heat. And maybe that's not a big deal, but if you're somebody like me and you have a lot of stuff in your room that generates heat, it's just going to add to the insuity of it, and it's going to generate about approximately what most products do, a standard amount of heat, and, well, that can heat up the room. So that's how that stuff works out. It's nice to be able to control what you have, but you got to realize that everything you do in life has a negative to it, and that's just how you got to look at it. And may that be any circumstance you do, that's just how we have to envision it. So I want to jump into the consoles and give you guys the information that's been presented and or confirmed. And as many of you guys would expect, When it's in the console, there's a very high chance that you're going to have zero control over what you record at. I'm going to imagine as of the moment that's 60 frames per second, 1280 by 720. If you guys are unfamiliar with those dimensions, that is 720p on YouTube or really any social media site. I imagine it's also going to be in progressive scanned. Even if you do run an interlaced TV, it's probably going to have to be reformatted to a progressive scan in order to come on YouTube. Now with that said, that's not to say that you won't record the video in 720i, but YouTube is automatically going to convert that, if that's the medium that you want to upload to 720p. Now some of you guys might ask the question of what is interlaced versus progressive scanned. Well, progressive scan is exactly what it sounds like. It is the P in 720, 1080, 360, 480, whatever the resolution is for YouTube. That's a good example. Progressive scan is the best. You want to have progressive scan because when you upload to anything on the internet, everything is reformatted to P, or progressive scanned. Interlaced is, well, in most cases, it's not good. Interlace is definitely an interesting format, and there's a huge discussion about it. And when you upload to YouTube or really anything on the internet, it automatically converts it. But that conversion also means that your quality is decreased. It looks worse than it would if it was in P. And even if you were to do it in 1080, it still wouldn't matter. It would not look as good as somebody that did it in the opposite version of it, which would be P as well. So anyway guys, that's I guess that short little introduction to that. Now, as many of you guys know, the next generation of consoles are not going to be 1080p. They are not high definition consoles, and if you were to compare, the PC is still leading the charge in quality. And, well, that's to be expected. I mean, they constantly have new hardware that comes out every single year. They are technologically more advanced than the consoles, and that's just how you have to look at it. Now, that's not to say that I hate either one. You guys know I own actually all three of them. So, and I like them all three for different reasons. But with that all said and done, realize that the consoles are going to be 1280 by 720. So the footage that you actually record at and the quality on your TV is going to have to match. So when you play, if you have a TV that is 1920 by 1080, which would be considered 1080p, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to tune it down if you really want to bring forth that beautiful that 720p quality to YouTube or social media in general, because you're going to want to capitalize on every single pixel. And since the consoles only record at a 720p interval, you're not going to be able to play the games at the best possible settings. And that's just kind of the trade-off, That's how technology works. Unfortunately, Microsoft and Sony didn't want to make their consoles 1080p, and nothing we can do about it. Financials is financials, marketing's marketing, but the company doesn't want to advance to that scale. That's just how you have to look at it. Now realize that hard drive space on the next generation of consoles is going to be a huge importance in how this stuff works out. As many of you guys are probably familiar, your Xbox or your PlayStation probably has a decent amount of hard drive space. But I imagine some of you veterans out there that have had your console since day one are reaching about the end of your hard drive space. That is if you buy a lot of games a year, you're financially stable and everything goes from that put. Realize that you're probably on about empty when it comes to hard drive space. If you're like me, I bought the Elite and I had the large PlayStation 3 hard drive as well, and I filled pretty much both of those up in my 7 years of playing video games. So I would imagine some of you veterans out there have done the same, and I'm sure some of you guys have had to delete some of your games because unfortunately you just ran out of space. Realize that the next generation of consoles, though the hard drives are larger, does not necessarily mean that the games are not going to also be larger in size as well. Now with that said, if the games are actually saved on, your recordings are saved onto your hard drive, well, that's not always a bad thing. I mean, that could be actually a good thing. That means that maybe you can take a USB, hook it into your computer, export the file, put it on your desktop, and maybe you can do exactly what everybody else does and have the abilities to, make commentary, render your videos, add whatever editing you want to them, and do that kind of stuff. And that's a good thing. I hope that's what they do, but I'm going to be honest with you guys, I highly doubt they'll do that, because they're going to want to keep control over the consumers. I would do the exact same thing if I was in their position, just because you want to maximize on your sales. You don't want to maximize on third-party sales. I mean, Vegas is considered another party, so why would you want to benefit another company, unless you have a contract with them, which in that case maybe. But anyway, just realize that if it is on the hard drive, you guys are going to have a good chance to definitely be able to hopefully render your videos, if it allow you to export those, of course. Now, unfortunately, if it is not that way and they have a restriction to where you cannot do that, just realize that those gameplays are going to add up over a while. Just realize that the more games you save up, the more hard drive space you diminish. And that's something to take into account. Now, that's not to say that if that's the possibility that they will be saved to the hard drive. If they're not, they might just be immediately uploaded to YouTube or whatever site you so wish, and you can continue on with your day. Unfortunately, you'll have no abilities to make commentary unless you want to, rip the file off of your channel and then go through the whole process. But by then, whatever social media site that you're choosing to upload to has probably already re-rendered the video into a format that is not as beautiful as it might be if you, bought a third-party brand, product and decided to do it yourself. So anyway, guys, that's the information that I have as of the moment. I know a lot of that is pretty far in between, but realize that, the next generation of consoles are going to bring a lot of good features to them. But maybe not every feature is something that is necessarily needed to the highest degree. Now, some of you guys might want to know, what do I personally think of these changes or alterations? Well, I'm completely for them, but just realize that if I'm correct, if you have zero control over your product, the quality is not going to be as amazing as what you see commonly on YouTube already. So definitely go into it day one about that, think about it, and decide if that's something you're interested in. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Let me know what you guys thought of the video, and I will see you guys in the next installment. So this is nMo, and I'll be signing out, guys. Peace.